responds to all of this speech about the hereafter with a sense of urgency. And it causes them to wake up at night and to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects them in the grave. Then there's a connection between Surah Al-Sajdah and the other surah that the Prophet ﷺ would read in Salat al-Fajr on the day of Friday. What is that surah? Y'all are really tired already. You can't be tired after a Dr. Al-Tah Hussein fundraiser. It's impossible. Surah Al-Sajdah and Surah Al-Insan. So first you have Al-Sajdah and Al-Mulk. And we're going to be pulling upon the similarities throughout this, inshallah, evening. Then you have the connection between Surah Al-Sajdah and Surah Al-Insan. The Prophet ﷺ on Fridays in Fajr would read Al-Sajdah and Al-Insan. And by the way, an authentic narration from Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, the Prophet ﷺ said the best salah of the week is Salatul Fajr in congregation on the day of Jumu'ah. So he chose these two surahs for the best salah of the week in Jama'ah. When people come together and they pray Fajr in Jama'ah on the day of Jumu'ah. What's the connection between the two? SubhanAllah, if you read these two surahs, it's very powerful. Surah Al-Sajdah is about Allah, starts off talking about Allah and who Allah is. Surah Al-Insan is about us and who we are. The opening of Surah Al-Sajdah is تَنْزِيلُ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ مِنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That this is a revelation of the book in which there is no doubt from the Lord of the worlds. Surah Al-Insan starts off with هَلْ أَتَى عَلَى الْإِنسَانِ شَيْءٌ مِنَ الدَّهْرِ لَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْئًا مَذْكُورًا. Do you remember, O man, when there came upon you a time when you were not even mentionable? No one knew who you were. You were non-existent. And so it starts off with the descent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of al-dhikr, of the remembrance in Surah Al-Sajdah. Surah Al-Insan is coming this way. You were not even shay'an mathkura. You were not even known. You had no mention, and Allah revealed the greatest mention. And subhanAllah, you see as it goes on, Allah Azza wa Jalla glorifies His revelation and the way that He created the heavens and the earth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Insan builds up the story of man, where you came from nothing and Allah made you something. And you chose whether to turn that into gratitude or to turn that into arrogance. So Surah Al-Sajdah speaks about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Al-Insan speaks about the humbleness of man. And it's these two beautiful stories that are converging together. And Allah Azza wa Jal is teaching us in this way that you cannot make sense of your existence unless you connect it to the existence of divine revelation. You can't make sense of your existence as a human being if you don't connect your existence as a human being to the existence of divine revelation. I'll give you an example of how this is done so beautifully in the Quran. When Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in Surah Al-Rahman His favors, Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaqa al-Insan. The most merciful, He taught the Quran and He created man. Taught the Quran and then created man. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you on this earth without existence, without purpose, or if you existed without knowing your purpose, then you have no way of making sense of who you are and why you're here. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not create anything without purpose. And so there's this beautiful connection between Al-Sajdah and Al-Insan. And of course, the best way that the insan, the human being, shows imma shakiran wa imma kafura, shows what being shakir is, being grateful is through sujood. Sajdat al-shukr, is through prostration. So the best state of al-insan is in as-sajdah. The scholars say, subhanAllah, if you look at Surah Al-Sajdah as well, Allah Azza wa Jalla begins speaking about the creations of the heavens and the earth. In Surah Al-Insan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins talking about the creation of human beings from a clock. So it's the unfolding of creation as well. And again, subhanAllah, submitting yourself. Tanzilun, that this is a revelation min Rabbil Alameen, from the Lord of the worlds, to Al-Insan, to the human being, submitting yourself to the Lord of the worlds is best encapsulated in a sujood, in the state of prostration. So there's a connection there as well. The Prophet ﷺ, also the fact that he chose to read this on Fridays. What's the connection between as-sajda and Yawm al-Jum'ah? Yawm al-Jum'ah, the day of Friday, is the best day of the week, and it is the day, amongst many things, that Allah created Adam alayhi salam, and it is the day in which we will all be resurrected before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so the greatest act that you would hope to be able to have on the Day of Judgment is the ability to prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as you used to prostrate here. And the only people that will be able to do sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment are the people that used to do sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya. The Day of Judgment is not a time for you to learn things. The Day of Judgment is a time for you to reap what you have sown in this world. And so it's beautifully connected to these things. In Surah Al-Jum'ah, on the day of Jum'ah, you're called to leave the dunya behind and to answer the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here you are in this beautiful surah, responding to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before the Day of Judgment. Before it's visible to you, you're already exerting yourself. Before you can see it, you are already applying it in your life. Now, subhanAllah, I just want you to appreciate how visible this surah was in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. This means that if you applied the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, just think about this with me. The Prophet ﷺ would have read Surah Al-Sajda before he slept on Thursday night, and then he would have woke up on Friday morning to reading Surah Al-Sajda in the Fajr Salah. That's how frequently he's reciting this surah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So clearly it has magnificent virtues that we have failed to take into consideration. Now, if you were to open the books of tafsir, a lot of times you have the virtues of these surahs that are listed. Most of those virtues are exaggerations or things that were said by scholars of the past that may or may not be exact, right? They're praising the surah, and sometimes that praise of the surah fits the overall praise of the Quran, but it speaks to something in it. So, in Ruh al-Ma'ani, you find, that on the day of Qiyamah, Surah Al-Sajda will have two wings and give shade to its reciters. And it will say to the angels to not seize the reciter. Even if it's not true to that surah, if we don't have a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, we know that the Quran shades a person on the Day of Judgment. And clearly this is a surah that protects, and that if a person understands, specifically prepares them for the Day of Judgment. There's another narration from Ibn Omar